I upload daily NBA videos on this channel, so if that is something that interests you, then subscribe. Also drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. Also, real quick, go subscribe to my podcast channel because we are going to be uploading podcasts there weekly from here on out. So if you're not subscribed there already, please be sure to go do that. But with that out of the way, today we are talking about the top 10 centers in the NBA today and getting some honorable mentions out of the way, which I've not had in the last 2 videos. I have Brook Lopez, Clint Capela, and Wendell Carter Jr. Brook Lopez is a very good defensive player and a good three-point shooter, and there are times of the week where it would seem like he should be higher on this list than he is, but this position is just rather deep. Clint Capela is a really good run, jump, and dunk guy who's a good rebounder, good rim protector. He's someone who's going to average like 14 and 12 with a lot of good rim protection and good efficiency. He's not a guy who's going to take bad shots or anything like that, just like a guy who fills his role pretty well. And Wendell Carter Jr., you might say this is me just being a biased Bulls fan right now, but the guy has been rather exceptional for the Bulls after his really rough start. Still not hitting threes, but he's averaging around 13 points and 8 rebounds as well as 3 assists. His playmaking has taken a big leap. He's been a good defensive player, and especially if you eliminate the first couple of games and consider the fact that he's only playing 27 minutes per game, the guy is definitely in the upper echelon of centers in the NBA, at least in the top half of starting centers. But with that out of the way, we're now getting in at number 10, where I have Al Horford. Brook Lopez can be better than Al Horford depending on the day of the week, like I said, but Al is still very good. I feel like last year people got the impression he was washed when really he wasn't washed. He was just not playing his proper position, and he was on a team that was just not built for him to succeed. In a situation in OKC, he's more relied upon, and he's been decent. He hasn't been amazing in the efficiency department, but he's been more of the Al Horford of old as of recent. He is not shooting well from the field, 42% from the field and 32% from 3 on about 5 attempts, but he's been doing some playmaking stuff, and he's been rebounding well, and he's been playing good defense. The OKC Thunder are actually not a horrible defensive team. As in fact, they are right in the middle of the pack at 14. Part of that is because of Al Horford, and part of that is because of Lou Dort, who completely fucked the Bulls up yesterday. But Al Horford is a lot better than a lot of people give him credit for because of the season he had last year. The guy was literally an all-star 2 years ago, and I don't think his game has fundamentally changed all that much. So that's Al Horford. Then at number 9, I have Jusuf Nurkic, who unfortunately just sustained a wrist injury, and he's going to be out for a good while. Nurkic is one of those players where it's like, he's not like standout amazing at anything, but he's just pretty much good at almost everything that a center needs to be good at. He's good in the post, good finishing at the basket, can stretch out the floor, not at an elite level, but a solid level, at least from the mid-range. His three-point shot is something that's developing, but it's looked pretty good at times. He's good defensively. He's not going to be a guy who can really guard the perimeter, but he's big enough around the basket, and he knows how to be in the right place at the right time. Good rebounder, pretty damn good passer as well. Nurkic is just an all-around good player. He's not, like I said, he doesn't stand out really in any department, but he's just pretty much good at almost everything. Right above him is Nikola Vuchevich. This is a 20 and 10 big man who can be pretty damn efficient. Issue with him is he's really not a defensive player at all. He can stretch out the floor, but he's just not good defensively. He's not horrible, but he's definitely not great. And also his three-point shot, even though it's gone in at a decent rate throughout the past couple of years, it's still not something that I'd trust. Like, I would be pretty happy to leave him open in a playoff series, and I would be rather confident that he's not going to kill you from out there. Although I know he had a really good shooting performance in the playoffs last year. I don't remember which game it was. But yeah, Nikola Vuchevich is a very good scoring big man, a solid rebounder, and he gets by on defense, but he's not as good as you would really like out of that position. Then above him is Deandre Ayton. He is working on his ability to stretch the floor a bit. What I would say really what makes him a tad above Vuchevich to me is that I think DeAndre is a pretty good defensive center. He's not great, but I'd say he's a little bit above average. Maybe not entirely for the position, but he's definitely a plus defender, whereas Vuch, I would say, is probably more in the neutral department. He's also a very good pick and roll player. The thing that is an issue with DeAndre that's really preventing him from becoming an all-star caliber guy is that he's really not as physical as you'd think someone as big and strong as him would be. He doesn't get to the free throw line a lot. He's not really one to just force himself into the paint when he definitely seems to have the ability. It could be a question of the wiring and his motor and all of that. At the end of the day, he's a 18-10 big man who's pretty good defensively. His ability to step up on the pick and roll and out on the perimeter has definitely improved, and his effort on that end has definitely improved. It's just it's not amazing, but I do think he's better defensively than Vuch. If you want to give Vuch the edge because he can shoot threes better than Ayton, and even though he's a worse defensive player, I would understand that logic. I just personally value defense probably more than anything out of this position. To a certain extent, we're going to talk about Karl Anthony Towns later because that's where that logic kind of dissipates. But after Ayton, I have kind of a tier above him is Domantas Sabonis. Sabonis has been amazing this year, and I got a few people giving me shit for not putting him in my power forward category. Even though he technically gets a lot of minutes at power forward, I consider him a center. It's really just because Miles Turner is there. Like, if Miles was not on that team, Sabonis is a center. So yeah, Sabonis, his playmaking has really taken a leap. He's just offensively, he has a decent mid-range shot. He's actually been taking threes this year, and I don't remember what exact percentage it was, but it's not like bad. He's a very good post scorer. He's solid in the pick and roll, and he just knows what to do with the ball in his hands. And it's like, he's not some very athletic guy. He's not physically imposing, but he's just smart and he's skilled, and he gets by on that rather easily, and he's what's keeping the Pacers a pretty damn respectable team, despite the fact that their talent overall probably doesn't seem all that impressive. But after Sabonis, I have Rudy Gobert, one of the NBA fan base's favorite players to shit on, and I will say I was definitely higher on Gobert a few years ago than I am right now. I used to think he was the third best center in the NBA. That's definitely not the case anymore. Part of that is because his defense has fallen off a little bit. He's still a very good defensive player, but there was a time where he was arguably the best defensive center in the NBA, and I would definitely say he really isn't that anymore. I would give that title to Bam Adebayo, but he's definitely a very good defensive player. And then offensively, I think just because he doesn't really have a post game and he can't shoot, he gets a little bit more shit than he should. He's very good at finishing at the basket, gets a lot of offensive rebounds. He's just good at what a center should do on offense when they're not that skilled, and that's perfectly valid. It's not like it's what's holding him back from being towards the top of this category, but it's definitely nice. And then obviously, since I hinted at it right after Gobert, I have Bam Adebayo. Bam, really the difference is that, one, he's more capable offensively because he's a better ball handler and a much better playmaker. Playmaking is an actual skill of his that doesn't really exist for Rudy Gobert. And then he's also got a decent mid-range jump shot, and there's potential that he ends up starting shooting threes. It's something that people have talked about the past couple of years, especially last year, and it hasn't really happened. I would like to see it happen, but it hasn't yet. Bam, literally Bam with a three-point shot, he's probably top 13 player in the NBA as soon as he's a decent three-point shooter, because his way to just impact the game despite not being a high volume scorer and really not just seeming all that impressive in terms of just busting out highlight plays. He's just so good defensively, and then on offense he just does everything right, and because of that he's just great on both ends of the floor. And if he became a good three-point shooter, that's really just taking it to a whole nother level. I would argue that he's on the same kind of level as Jimmy Butler if he just has a three-point shot. But after Bam, I have Karl Anthony Towns. Now, as I said, I really value defense in the center position, really more so than anything else. However, it comes a point where offensively, it's so good, your offense is so good that it overtakes the value that a player brings defensively. That's why, spoiler alert, I also have Nikola Jokic as my number one center in the league, even though Joel Embiid is a much better defensive player, and Bam Adebayo and Rudy Gobert are both much better defensive players than Karl Anthony Towns. As much as I value defense at that position, I think both Cat and Jokic are so good offensively at an outlier level for their position that it makes up for the fact that their defense is subpar. But I will say for the both of them, and especially Cat, the defense has gotten better. Jokic is still not really good defensively. He's okay rim protection wise just because he's a really big body, but his instincts on that end and the fact that he's just very slow footed holds him back from being anywhere near the good category. On top of that, the fact that he can only jump like 2 inches off of the ground, which I can relate to, prevents him from being a like real shot blocker at all. He's just a guy who can be big in the paint, and then hopefully that ends up working out and preventing guys from getting easy layups. And then for Karl Anthony Towns, he's more athletic, more capable off of his feet, definitely a lot faster. And I'd say he's actually grown to be a mediocre defensive center. And mediocre has a negative connotation, obviously, but it really just means that he's average pretty much. And he was a lot worse than average a few years ago. So you got to give him props for that. Also, he just got the virus, and with all of the shit that's going on with him in real life, this isn't really related to the video, but that's just fucking unfortunate, and I feel really bad for Cat. But outside of that, he's just an absurd offensive talent. I think he's one of the 10 best scorers in the NBA rather easily. His overall his game outside of the scoring not being amazing is what holds him back from being really in any further than like the top 15 spot. But his offense, make no mistake, and especially his scoring is just ridiculous. He shot like 7 threes a game on 40%, taking like step back threes as a center. You're going to see in this gameplay that I take a couple step back threes with him, because that's some shots that he makes in real life, because he's just a complete, like, I think he's genuinely the most well-rounded offensive center that has ever been. Or scoring center, that is. Not the best scoring center in general, but in terms of just having an all-around game, I don't think there's anyone that comes close to competing with Cat in the all-around scoring department as a center. But that's enough me gushing about Karl Anthony Towns. I have him as my third best center in the NBA. I would understand if you had Bam Adebayo over him. Don't really understand Rudy Gobert, because I think Bam and Cat are a step above Rudy Gobert, but I'd understand if you thought Bam was better just because of how impactful he is at everything besides for scoring the ball. But I personally just think Cat's offense is so ridiculous that even though he's not a great defensive center like Bam Adebayo, it makes up for that difference. And then, obviously, my top two centers, which are pretty much everyone's top two centers, Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid. This is a debate that it seems like the general opinion has shifted. It used to be a majority Joel Embiid, as Jokic was really coming onto the scene, because Embiid was a little bit earlier than Jokic, and some people took time to be convinced about Jokic. But as time has gone on, I think Jokic is the majority opinion of the best center in the NBA. The argument for Joel Embiid is just the fact that he is also a really good offensive player, and then he is one of the best defensive players in the NBA, like probably one of the 10 best defensive players in the NBA, and that argument is completely legit. I understand where people are coming from there. My point here is that I believe that Jokic is like, not, his own offense goes outside of his own ability because of how elite of a playmaker he is, on top of the fact that you can't double him as an amazing post player because of how good that playmaking is. I give him that edge over Embiid because his ability to create a ridiculous offensive system is so much higher than I believe it is for Embiid. He's already done it. And I understand some situations around Embiid have not been ideal for him to do things like that, but I just think you build a team around Jokic, that offensive system is going to be absurd, and then defensively you can be okay. Whereas if you build a team around Joel Embiid, the defense is going to be good, and the offense is going to be pretty good, but it could definitely be better. Offensively for sure. And I just personally think that Jokic's impact, because of how impactful he is offensively overall, puts him over Joel Embiid. But I understand the opposite perspective of valuing the defense over how much better offensively he is than Embiid. So that's my top 10 centers in the NBA. Going over the list again, which I forgot to do in the last two videos. Al Horford at 10, Jusuf Nurkic at 9, Nikola Jokic at 8, DeAndre Ayton at center. At 7, he is at center. All of these guys are at center. Domantas Sabonis at 6, Rudy Gobert at 5, Bam Adebayo at 4, Karl Anthony Towns at 3, Joel Embiid at 2, and Nikola Jokic as the #1 center in the NBA. That is the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.